"I'll pay you 100 grand to pretend to be my husband tonight," the CEO said. Catherine Sterling had never felt so desperate in her 35 years of life. The woman who ran one of the biggest tech companies in this part of the country was right there, in the most elegant bar in Austin, with her hands shaking and her heart racing. That's when she saw the dark-haired bartender arranging glasses behind the counter, and a crazy idea crossed her mind. She approached slowly, watching how he worked carefully and paid attention to detail. "Excuse me," Catherine said, her voice coming out tenser than she would have liked. The young man turned, revealing an honest face and brown eyes. He must have been about 28, maybe 30. He wore the bar's simple uniform with dignity. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" Catherine took a deep breath. She knew what she was about to do sounded absurd, but she had no choice. "I have a proposal for you, a proposal that will change your life." The bartender looked at her with curiosity, but without judgment. "I'll pay you $100,000 to pretend to be my husband tonight." The words came out all at once, as if she wanted to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Caleb Beckett thought he had misheard. He stopped polishing the glass in his hands and looked directly at the woman in front of him. She was wearing an elegant outfit, an impeccable white shirt, and a dark green skirt that matched her eyes. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Everything about her screamed money and power. "Sorry, I think I didn't understand correctly." "You understood perfectly," Catherine insisted, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I need you to pretend to be my husband for a few hours. It's a complicated family situation." Caleb set the glass on the counter. In 3 years working at that bar, he had seen it all. Drunk clients making indecent proposals, businessmen discussing shady deals, bored rich women looking for adventures. But this was different. There was real desperation in that woman's voice. "Ma'am, Catherine, my name is Catherine Sterling." The name sounded familiar, but Caleb couldn't remember where he knew it from. "Miss Catherine, I work here. I have responsibilities. I can't just leave." Catherine looked around. The bar was relatively empty for a Tuesday night. A few executives were drinking whiskey at a corner table. A young couple shared a bottle of wine on the patio. Nothing that justified having all the staff present. "How much do you make a month?" The question caught Caleb off guard. He stared at her for a few seconds before answering. "That's not relevant." 5,000? 6,000? Catherine continued. "With $100,000, you can go a year without working. You can pay all your bills. You can help your family." The last sentence hit Caleb hard. How did she know he needed to help his family? Maybe it was just a guess, but she had hit the nail on the head. "Why me? You have money? You must know a lot of people." Catherine sighed. That was a question she had asked herself dozens of times in the last few days. "Because you seem trustworthy, and because I don't have time for long explanations. I need someone right now." And what exactly would I have to do? Just pretend, for a few hours, meet my family, answer a few basic questions, look convincing. Caleb felt a pang of suspicion. It seemed too simple to be worth that much money. What kind of family situation requires a charade like this? Catherine hesitated. Revealing the truth meant showing her vulnerability to a complete stranger, but she had no alternative. "My grandmother passed away 3 months ago. She left a will with a specific condition for me to inherit control of the family company. I need to be married by tomorrow morning, otherwise I lose everything. And why don't you just get married for real?" The question sounded almost naive, and Catherine couldn't hide a bitter smile. "It's not that simple. And even if it were, I don't have anyone in my life right now." Caleb absorbed the information. A company big enough to be worth a $100,000 sham, a clearly successful woman who had no one she could count on. There was a sadness there that he recognized. "What's the name of your company?" "Sterling Systems, maybe you've heard of it." Caleb nearly choked. Sterling Systems was one of the largest software companies in Texas. He had read about them in the papers. And Catherine Sterling was the youngest CEO in the industry in the United States. Are you serious about the 100,000? Completely. I can transfer half now and half later. Caleb glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost 10 at night. His shift would end at 11, and it would only be tonight. A few hours, at most until dawn. He thought of his sister Sadie, 23, who had been unemployed for 6 months. He thought of the overdue bills, the rent for the apartment they shared, the expensive medication she needed for her depression. $100,000 would solve all their problems at once. I'd need to tell my boss. I'll talk to him. Catherine walked to the back of the bar, where a middle-aged man was checking inventory. Caleb watched her gesture calmly, saw the man look in his direction with a surprised expression, then nod. She came back a few minutes later. It's settled. My driver is on his way. We have to go. Wait, Caleb raised his hand. I didn't even say I accept. But you will, Catherine stated with certainty. I can see in your eyes that you need that money. It was true, and Caleb hated that he was so transparent. What are the rules? Nothing complicated. You'll say we've known each other for 2 years. We got married 6 months ago in a simple ceremony. You work in administration at a mid-sized company. You're reserved, so my family has never met you before. And if they ask questions I don't know how to answer, I'll steer the conversation. You just confirm and smile. A black car pulled up in front of the bar. The driver got out and waited by the vehicle. This is your last chance, Catherine said. You get in this car with me and earn $100,000, or you go back to your normal life. Caleb took off his apron and set it behind the counter. His hands shook slightly, but his decision was made. Let's go before I change my mind. In the car, as they drove through the upscale streets of Austin toward the Westlake Hills neighborhood, Catherine began explaining the details. My whole family will be gathered at my mother's house. They're complicated people, especially my cousin Priscilla. She's always wanted to control the company and will do everything to prove our marriage is fake. And what happens if she succeeds? I lose everything, and Priscilla takes over Sterling Systems. Caleb watched Catherine's profile as she spoke. There was a hardness there, an armor she had built over the years. But there was also genuine fear. Why did your grandmother impose that condition? Catherine was silent for a few minutes, watching the city lights pass by the window. Grandma Eleanor always said a woman needs a man by her side to be complete. It was an old-fashioned view, but she was born in 1930. To her, a single woman at 35 was practically a tragedy. And do you agree with that? Of course not. But now what I think doesn't matter. What matters is what's in the will. The car stopped in front of an imposing mansion. Caleb felt his stomach turn. This was much bigger than he had imagined. Remember, Catherine said as the driver opened the door, we've been married for 6 months. We met when you were consulting for a partner company. It was love at first sight. And why did you never introduce me to the family before? Because I'm private, and because you're shy. They got out of the car and walked to the entrance of the house. Caleb had never set foot in a mansion before. The garden was immaculate, with exotic plants and a fountain in the center. The windows were huge, all lit up, showing that there were many people inside. We take a deep breath, Catherine said, more to herself than to him. The door opened before they even touched the doorbell. A woman around 45 received them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked like Catherine, but with lighter hair and a stiffer posture. Catherine, dear, so glad you could make it. Hi, Priscilla. This is my husband, Caleb. Caleb extended his hand, but Priscilla completely ignored him, focusing her inquisitive gaze on Catherine. Husband? Since when are you married? 6 months ago, Catherine answered calmly. You were traveling at the time. What a coincidence. And why did you never bring him to meet us? Caleb is a private person. He prefers more intimate settings. Priscilla finally looked at Caleb, examining him from head to toe. He felt like an insect under a magnifying glass. And what do you do for a living, Caleb? I work in business administration, he replied, trying to sound confident. At what company? Caleb felt Catherine tense beside him. They hadn't planned that detail. A mid-sized company. Management consulting. He improvised. Interesting, Priscilla said, but clearly wasn't convinced. Well, come in. Mom is eager to meet her son-in-law. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. They entered the house, and Caleb had to make an effort not to show his amazement. The entrance hall had a huge crystal chandelier, marble stairs with mahogany railings, and paintings that looked like they came from a museum. "My God, Catherine," a female voice echoed from the living room. "Why didn't you tell me you were bringing a guest?" A woman around 65 approached them. She was elegant, with neatly styled white hair and a navy blue dress. Her eyes were just like Catherine's, but there was a sweetness there that her daughter had lost along the way. "Mom, this is Caleb, my husband." The woman stopped walking and stared at Caleb. For a moment, he thought she had seen through the charade immediately. "Harrison?" she whispered. Catherine and Priscilla exchanged worried glances. "Mom, this is Caleb, my husband. It's not Dad." Of course, the woman shook her head as if coming out of a daze. "Sorry, dear. Sometimes I get confused. I'm Miriam Sterling, mother of this stubborn girl." Caleb kissed her hand respectfully. "A pleasure, Mrs. Miriam. Catherine talks about you a lot." "What a polite liar," Miriam laughed. "Catherine never talks about anyone. She's as closed as an oyster." "Mom," Catherine protested. "It's true, dear, but I'm glad you found someone who makes you happy." Miriam led Caleb by the hand toward the living room, where several other people were chatting. "Everyone, come meet Catherine's husband." Caleb felt all eyes turn to him. There were about 15 people there of various ages. Some were clearly family, others looked like close friends. "Caleb, this is my brother, Arthur." Miriam introduced a man with graying hair and a prominent belly. "And this is my sister-in-law, Vivian." "Pleasure," Arthur greeted with a firm handshake. "What do you do?" "Business administration," Caleb repeated the answer he'd given Priscilla. "Oh, nice. At what company?" Again, the question he didn't know how to answer. Caleb quickly looked at Catherine, who came to his rescue. "Uncle Arthur, let Caleb breathe. He must already be nervous meeting the whole family at once." "Nervous? Why?" A young voice came from behind the couch. A girl around 20 appeared, clearly Arthur's daughter. "The Sterling family doesn't bite." "This is my cousin Chloe," Catherine said, Uncle Arthur's daughter. "Hi, brother-in-law." Chloe greeted him with 2 kisses on the cheek. "It's so nice to finally have someone normal in the family." "Chloe," Arthur scolded. "Oh, Dad, it's true. We've only got businessmen, lawyers, doctors. It's good to have someone more ordinary." Caleb wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult, but he chose to take it as affection. "It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Sit here next to me." Miriam pointed to an armchair. "Tell me how you won my daughter over. She's always been very difficult in relationships." Catherine sat on the arm of the chair, placing her hand on Caleb's shoulder in a gesture that seemed natural, but he could feel the tension in her fingers. "Well, it was a professional situation that turned personal," Caleb began, recalling the story they'd agreed on. "I was consulting for a company that had a partnership with Sterling Systems." "And then?" Chloe leaned in, interested. "Then Catherine showed up at a meeting, and I was speechless." "Oh, how cute." Chloe clapped her hands. "And what happened next?" Miriam asked. Catherine spoke up. "He spent about 2 months pestering me, calling with work excuses just to talk to me." "And it worked?" Arthur asked, smiling. "It ended up working," Catherine confirmed, and for a second Caleb saw a genuine smile on her lips. "How romantic," Vivian commented. "How long have you two been married?" 6 months, Caleb and Catherine answered at the same time. "And why didn't you have a party?" Priscilla asked, appearing with a wineglass in her hand. There was something calculating in her tone. "It was an intimate ceremony," Catherine replied. "Just the 2 of us and the witnesses." "Too bad. I would have loved to attend my favorite cousin's wedding. Caleb noticed the irony in Priscilla's tone, but the others didn't seem to. Where did you go on your honeymoon? Chloe asked. Another question they hadn't prepared for. Caleb felt panic rise in his chest. We haven't had one yet, Catherine answered quickly. Work was too hectic. Oh, that's a shame. You need to travel. Where would you like to go? Caleb loves the beach, Catherine said, looking at him for confirmation. That's true. I've always wanted to visit Maui. Great taste, Miriam approved. Harrison and I went there on our honeymoon. Again she mentioned Harrison, whom Caleb assumed was her late husband. Miriam stared off into the distance for a few seconds. Mum, do you want me to get your medicine? Catherine asked worriedly. No, dear. I'm fine. It's just that Caleb reminds me so much of your father when he was young. Priscilla stepped closer, like a predator sensing an opportunity. Really? In what way does he remind you of Uncle Harrison? The eyes, Miriam said thoughtfully. And the way he treats Catherine. Harrison was always very affectionate with me. Caleb felt Catherine relax a little beside him. Apparently, Miriam's confusion was playing in their favor. What an interesting coincidence, Priscilla murmured. Priscilla, stop being suspicious, Arthur intervened. The young man seems like a good man. Of course he does. Priscilla forced a smile. I'm just curious about my new cousin-in-law. A man around 50 approached the group. He wore an expensive suit and had an air of authority. Catherine, I need to speak with you, he said seriously. Of course, Mr. Whitaker, this is my husband, Caleb. Pleasure, the man greeted dryly. I'm the family lawyer. I handled your grandmother's will. Caleb felt a chill. That man clearly knew the details of the will and the condition of the marriage. Can we talk in private? Mr. Whitaker asked. We can talk right here, Catherine replied, squeezing Caleb's shoulder. Caleb is my husband. He's part of the family now. The lawyer hesitated, glancing around to see if anyone else was listening. Very well. As you know, the board meeting is tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I'll need to check some documentation before then. What kind of documentation? Priscilla asked, stepping closer. The marriage certificate, mainly. Caleb felt his blood run cold. Marriage certificate. Of course they'd need a marriage certificate. How had they not thought of that? No problem, Catherine said, but Caleb could hear the tension in her voice. I can take care of that. Great, I also need to speak with your husband about some legal details. What kind of details? Caleb asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Issues regarding the property regime mainly. Since you married after the will clauses were created, it's important to verify there was no financial interest in the relationship. The sentence landed like a bomb in the middle of the conversation. Caleb understood perfectly what the lawyer was implying. Mr. Whitaker, Catherine stood up. That's offensive. Caleb has no interest in the company. Of course. It's just standard procedure. Your grandmother was very specific about the conditions. What conditions? Priscilla asked, feigning innocence. The lawyer looked at her with disapproval. Priscilla, you know very well what conditions. Actually, I don't know all the details, she insisted. Grandma Eleanor's will is sealed until tomorrow's meeting, Catherine explained. We only know the basics. Caleb sensed that information was being hidden here, and apparently not even Catherine knew all the details. Well, Mr. Whitaker put some papers back in his briefcase. Everything will be clarified tomorrow. It was a pleasure meeting you, Caleb. After the lawyer walked away, an awkward silence settled over the group. What a heavy atmosphere, Chloe commented. Mr. Whitaker has always been very serious. It's his job, Uncle Arthur justified. He just wants to make sure everything is correct. Of course, Priscilla said, but there was a poorly disguised satisfaction in her voice. Catherine stood up. Caleb, let's take a walk in the garden. I need some air. They went out the back door into a garden even more impressive than the front one. There was a pergola with climbing plants, a lit pool, and several sitting areas scattered throughout the space. Damn, Catherine whispered as soon as they were alone. Marriage certificate. How did I not think of that? Can we get a fake one? Caleb suggested. In one night, impossible, and Mr. Whitaker knows every registry office in the area. They walked in silence to a more secluded area near a small fountain. "Catherine, No," she interrupted him. "Don't tell me you want to give up. Please. I was going to say that maybe we'll have to get married for real." Catherine stopped walking and stared at him. "What do you mean?" "There's an emergency civil marriage, isn't there, for special cases?" "There is, but then that's it. We get married for real tonight, solve tomorrow's problem, and then get divorced." Catherine studied him for a few seconds. "You would do that? Marry a stranger?" "For $100,000, yes." The answer came out colder than Caleb intended. Catherine made a face. "Right, the money. I didn't mean it like that. It's just... No, you're right. It's a business transaction. I shouldn't expect anything else." They stood in silence for a few minutes, the sound of the fountain filling the space between them. "Are there any registry offices open 24 hours?" Caleb asked. "No, but I know a judge who could perform an emergency marriage. He's been a family friend for years. And he would do that in the middle of the night? If I explain the situation, maybe." Catherine pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Judge Parker, this is Catherine Sterling." "Yes, I know it's almost 11 at night. I need a very special favor." Caleb watched her explain the situation in vague terms, without mentioning the charade. After a few minutes, she hung up. "He can see us at 2 in the morning at his office. He said it's irregular, but he'll do it out of respect for my grandmother's memory. And until then, we have to hang on for a few more hours here. We can't raise suspicions by leaving early." They went back inside the house where the family had gathered in the dining room for an evening snack. The table was set with assorted delicacies, thin sandwiches, fruit, specialty cheeses, and wine. "Ah, so glad you're back," Miriam welcomed them. "We missed you too." "Sorry, Mrs. Miriam, I was just showing Caleb the garden." "And what did you think?" Arthur asked. "Impressive. You have excellent taste in landscaping." "Oh, it wasn't me. It was my mother-in-law, Eleanor. She planned the entire garden." "Grandma Eleanor was very talented," Chloe added. "She decorated the whole house too." "She had refined taste," Priscilla agreed, "and she was very smart, especially with business." Caleb noticed Priscilla was trying to steer the conversation back to the will. "She really was a special woman," Catherine said. "She taught me so many things." "That's true," Miriam confirmed. "Eleanor always said a woman needs to be strong, but she also needs a good man by her side." "An interesting philosophy," Caleb commented. "She lived in a different era," Vivian explained, "when women depended more on their husbands." "But she always worked," Catherine recalled, "even after she got married." "She worked, but my father was always the head of the family," Arthur said. "Uncle Arthur?" "It wasn't exactly like that," Chloe countered. "Great-grandma Eleanor made a lot of important decisions for the company." "That's true," Miriam agreed. "She and Harrison were a perfect partnership." Again, the mention of Harrison, who Caleb now understood was Catherine's grandfather. "They loved each other very much," Miriam continued, looking at Caleb, "just like you and Catherine." Caleb felt Catherine tense up beside him. "Yes," he confirmed. "Catherine is a very special person." "How do you know it's true love?" Chloe asked with the typical curiosity of youth. The question caught Caleb off guard. How to explain true love when all of this was a charade? "Well," he began slowly, "it's a feeling of completeness, like finding a part of yourself you didn't even know was missing." Catherine looked at him in surprise. She hadn't expected such a deep answer. "How sweet," Chloe sighed. "And you, Catherine?" Priscilla asked. "How do you know it's true love?" Catherine hesitated. She had never experienced true love. Her relationships had always been shallow, based on convenience or physical attraction. "It's when you want to be a better person because of the other person," she finally answered. "Perfect," Vivian approved. "You two make a beautiful couple." "Absolutely," Arthur agreed. "It was about time Catherine found someone good." "She's had so many frustrating relationships," Miriam sighed. "That terrible Bennett, Graham, who only wanted her money." "Mom!" Catherine protested, red with embarrassment. "It's true, dear. You always picked the wrong men. Caleb is different. I can see in his eyes that he truly loves you." Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. Miriam's innocence made it all seem even more wrong. "Thank you, Mrs. Miriam." Catherine really is special. Of course she is, Priscilla said, but there was a coldness in her voice. Catherine was always Grandma Eleanor's favorite. Priscilla, Arthur began in a warning tone. What? It's true. Grandma always said Catherine was just like her. Determined, smart, good with business. And why does that bother you? Chloe asked. It doesn't bother me, Priscilla lied. I just find it curious how things fall perfectly into place for some people. Caleb felt the tension rise in the room. It was obvious there was a long-standing feud between Catherine and Priscilla. Priscilla, if you have something to say it clearly, Catherine challenged. I don't have anything to say. I'm just happy about your very convenient marriage. What do you mean by that? Nothing, dear. Just that it's interesting how you found a husband just now. The silence that followed was tense. Everyone at the table seemed uncomfortable, except for Priscilla, who wore a satisfied smile. Priscilla, Miriam intervened firmly. Enough with the insinuations. Caleb is welcome in this family. Of course, Auntie. I didn't say otherwise. Arthur changed the subject, asking about Caleb's work, and the tension gradually eased. But Caleb noticed that Priscilla hadn't given up. She was just waiting for the right moment to strike. At 2 in the morning, Catherine and Caleb said goodbye to the family with the excuse that they had to wake up early for work the next day. It was a pleasure meeting you, Caleb, Arthur said. I hope to see you more often. Absolutely, Caleb replied, feeling guilty about the lie. Take care, Miriam hugged them. And don't take so long to visit us again. We won't, Mom. Priscilla said goodbye with a kiss on the cheek that felt more like a veiled threat. See you tomorrow, cousin. It's going to be an interesting day. In the car on the way to the courthouse, Catherine and Caleb sat in silence for a few minutes. Your cousin really doesn't like you, Caleb observed. It's a long story. Priscilla always thought she should be the one to inherit the company. And why isn't she? Because Grandma Eleanor chose me. Priscilla has a very aggressive vision for business. Grandma always preferred more ethical methods. And now she'll have the chance to take over if our charade doesn't work. Exactly. They arrived at the courthouse, an imposing building even in the silence of the early morning. A security guard was waiting at the entrance. Catherine Sterling? The man asked. That's me. Judge Parker is waiting in his office. They went up to the 3rd floor where a man in his 60s with grey hair and glasses received them. Catherine, my dear, he greeted her warmly. I'm sorry for the loss of your grandmother. Thank you, Judge Parker. This is Caleb, my fiancé. Future husband, the judge corrected. Well, this is quite an unusual situation. A wedding at dawn is not something I do often. I understand, Your Honor, and I'm very grateful. Explain to me again why the urgency. Catherine repeated an edited version of the story, mentioning complex family matters without going into details about the will. I see, Judge Parker nodded. Well, if you're sure this is what you want to do. We are, Catherine and Caleb answered at the same time. Very well. Let's begin. The ceremony was simple and quick. Judge Parker read the basic vows. They confirmed they accepted to be married, exchanged rings borrowed from the judge himself, and signed the documents. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Caleb and Catherine looked at each other. Technically, they were now truly married. Congratulations, Judge Parker smiled. I hope you'll be very happy. Thank you, Catherine said, still processing what had just happened. They left the courthouse at 3:30 in the morning, officially married. Now what? Caleb asked. Now we go to my house. You can rest a few hours before the meeting. Catherine's house was in an extremely upscale, gated community. It was modern, with clean lines and lots of glass. Inside it was immaculately decorated but cold. There were no personal photos or objects that revealed the owner's personality. You can sleep in the guest room, Catherine indicated, or on the couch in the living room if you prefer. The room is fine. There are towels in the bathroom closet. If you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall. Caleb nodded and headed to the room. It was spacious and well furnished, but equally impersonal. Lying on the bed, he tried to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. He had left to work at a bar and ended the day married to a millionaire. It was too surreal to be real. But the money was real. Catherine had transferred $50,000 into his account as soon as they left the courthouse. In a few hours, he would receive the other $50,000 and could solve all of his family's financial problems. He just needed to hold on for a few more hours. Catherine, in her room, also couldn't sleep. She was married. For the first time in her life, she was officially married, and to a complete stranger who was only doing it for the money. But there was something about him that intrigued her. The way he had handled her family, the clever answers he had given, the naturalness with which he had played the role of a devoted husband, and especially the way he had looked at her when he said that love was finding a lost part of yourself. Was it just acting, or was there something deeper there? At 7 in the morning, Catherine knocked on the guest room door. "Caleb, we need to get ready." He opened the door a few minutes later, with messy hair and a sleepy expression that made him look younger. "What time is the meeting?" 9 o'clock. Do you want breakfast?" In the kitchen, Catherine made coffee and toast. It was a strangely domestic moment for two people who barely knew each other. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Nervous. And you?" "The same." They ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. "Catherine," Caleb finally said, "can I ask a personal question?" "Sure." "Why have you never gotten married? I mean, for real?" Catherine hesitated before answering. "I've never found someone who wanted me for myself, and not for what I have." "That must be hard." "It is. You end up not trusting anyone." "And why did you trust me?" "Because you're a bar employee who needs money. At least you're honest about your motives." Caleb didn't know if that was a compliment or a criticism. "And you?" Catherine asked. "Why have you never gotten married?" "I never had the financial means to support a family, and then my sister got sick, so—" "What kind of illness?" "Severe depression. She can't work. She needs constant medical care." Catherine studied him for a few seconds. "It must be hard to take care of someone like that." "It is. But she's the only family I have." There was a sincerity in his voice that touched Catherine in an unexpected way. "Come on," she said, standing up. "We have to get to the company." Sterling Systems occupied an entire building in the Auxiliadora district. It was modern and impressive, with the company logo in large letters on the facade. "Is it yours?" Caleb asked, clearly impressed. "Technically not yet. After today's meeting it will be." They went up to the top floor, where the boardroom was located. Catherine greeted employees along the way, and Caleb noticed the respect everyone had for her. "Good morning, Catherine," a secretary greeted her. "Mr. Whitaker has already arrived. And Priscilla, too." "Thank you, Beth." In the boardroom there was a large oval table with leather chairs around it. Mr. Whitaker was organizing papers at one end, and Priscilla was talking to a man Caleb didn't know. "Good morning," Catherine greeted. "Catherine, dear," Priscilla smiled falsely. "And Caleb, what a surprise to see you here." "Good morning, Priscilla." "This is my lawyer, Mr. Bennett," she introduced the man beside her. "I came prepared for today." Catherine's stomach tightened. Priscilla had brought a lawyer. That meant she was planning something. "Mr. Whitaker," Catherine addressed the family lawyer, "can we begin?" "Of course. First, I need to verify the marriage documentation." Catherine handed over the certificate they had received in the early hours. Mr. Whitaker examined it carefully. "Everything is in order. Marriage performed yesterday, or rather, early this morning." "How romantic," Priscilla commented sarcastically. "A wedding in the middle of the night." "There was a family emergency," Catherine explained vaguely. Of course, Priscilla didn't seem convinced. Arthur and Miriam arrived a few minutes later, followed by Chloe and a few other family members. "Good morning, everyone," Arthur greeted. "Shall we get this meeting started?" Mr. Whitaker positioned himself at the head of the table. "We are gathered here for the official reading of Eleanor Sterling's will and the transfer of assets according to her final wishes." He opened a thick folder and pulled out some documents. "As you all know, Eleanor Sterling left specific instructions regarding the inheritance of the family business." "Mr. Whitaker," Priscilla interrupted. "Before the reading, I would like to question the legitimacy of Catherine's marriage." A tense silence filled the room. "Priscilla," Arthur protested, "what kind of question is that?" It's a legitimate question, Uncle Arthur. The marriage happened just on the eve of this meeting. It's a very convenient coincidence. Priscilla is right, her lawyer agreed. There are grounds for suspicion. Catherine felt her blood boil. What kind of suspicion? A marriage of convenience, Mr. Bennet replied, to artificially fulfill the conditions of the will. That's absurd, Catherine defended herself. Is it? Priscilla stood up. Then why did you two get married at 3 in the morning, hours before this meeting? Caleb realized the situation was getting out of control. Priscilla had found something out. How do you know what time we got married? Catherine asked. Because I had it investigated, Priscilla revealed triumphantly. I hired a private detective. Miriam looked shocked. Priscilla, how could you do such a thing? To protect the family's interests, Aunt Miriam. What kind of investigation? Mr. Whittaker asked. Priscilla's lawyer opened a folder and distributed some sheets around the table. We discovered that Caleb Beckett works as a waiter at the Velvet Lounge. His salary is $3,000 a month. He lives in a rented 2-bedroom apartment with his unemployed sister. Caleb felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. His entire life had been investigated and exposed. There's nothing wrong with that. Catherine defended herself, but her voice trembled slightly. Of course there is, Mr. Bennet continued. A waiter earning $3,000 marries a millionaire in the middle of the night, on the eve of the meeting, that will decide the future of a $200 million company. The conclusion is obvious. Are you insinuating that, Arthur began. That it's a fake marriage, Priscilla finished, arranged to fulfill the will's condition. Chloe looked from one person to another, trying to understand what was happening. Is that true, Catherine? She asked naively. Catherine looked at Caleb. His eyes were fixed on the table, his hands trembling slightly. He looked like a cornered animal. Of course it's not true, she lied. Then explain, Priscilla challenged, how a waiter met the CEO of Sterling Systems. Catherine repeated the story they had agreed on about the business consulting, but now it sounded forced and unconvincing. And where exactly does Caleb work as a consultant? Mr. Bennet asked. At a mid-sized company, Caleb answered, trying to keep his voice steady. Which company? Caleb hesitated. They hadn't agreed on a specific name. Miller Consulting, he improvised. Interesting, Mr. Bennet smiled. Because I called every consulting firm in Austin. None of them has an employee named Caleb Beckett. The silence that followed was devastating. Caleb felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Mr. Whittaker, Priscilla addressed the family lawyer, I request that the marriage be considered fraudulent and that Catherine be disqualified from the inheritance. Wait, Miriam stood up, clearly agitated. Are you saying that Catherine lied to all of us? Mum, Catherine began, but didn't know how to continue. Auntie, Priscilla said in a gentle tone, I know it's hard to accept, but Catherine deceived us. Miriam looked at Caleb, then at Catherine, her eyes filled with tears. Why? She whispered. Why did you do this to us? Caleb couldn't take it anymore. He stood up abruptly from his chair. Stop, he said to Priscilla. Enough. Caleb. Catherine tried to stop him. No, he interrupted her. Your cousin is right. I'm a waiter. I work at the Velvet Lounge for $3,000 a month. Catherine offered me $100,000 to pretend to be her husband for one night. The shock in the room was palpable. Miriam pressed her hand to her chest. Arthur shook his head in disbelief. Chloe opened her mouth without making a sound. But, Caleb continued, what she didn't say is why. Caleb, no, Catherine pleaded. Catherine found out about the will's condition only a few days ago, he explained. She was desperate, about to lose everything she built, everything she worked for her entire life. And why? Because her grandmother, with all due respect to her memory, believed that a woman needs a man to be complete. Priscilla tried to interrupt him, but Caleb continued. You want to know the truth? The truth is that Catherine is the most capable person I have ever met. She turned this company into one of the largest in this part of the country. She employs hundreds of people. She created job opportunities, paid taxes, contributed to society. And you want to take all that away from her because she didn't find a husband in time. But she lied, Priscilla protested. She was forced to lie, Caleb countered, by an outdated system that judges a woman's worth by the presence of a man by her side. Miriam dried her tears with a handkerchief. Caleb is right, she said softly. Mom? Catherine looked at her in surprise. Eleanor was wrong. I always knew it, but I never had the courage to argue with her. You don't need a husband to be a complete person, dear. But the will, Priscilla began. The will was written by a woman from another time, Miriam addressed Mr. Whitaker. Isn't there anything we can do to change it? The family lawyer consulted his papers. Actually, he said slowly, there's an additional clause that hasn't been read yet. Everyone in the room turned to him. What kind of clause? Priscilla asked, clearly nervous. Mr. Whitaker put on his glasses and read a specific paragraph. Should there be questions about the legitimacy of the heir's marriage, the final decision shall rest with the family council, composed of the children and grandchildren of Harrison Sterling, who shall judge whether the relationship is based on true love, regardless of the circumstances of its formalization. Catherine looked around the table. The family council consisted of her mother, Miriam, her uncle Arthur, her cousin Chloe, and her cousin Priscilla. In other words, Mr. Whitaker explained, even if the marriage was arranged, if the council believes there is true love between the two of you, the inheritance will be valid. Priscilla turned pale. That was not the easy victory she had expected. Well, Arthur said thoughtfully, that changes everything. It doesn't change anything, Priscilla argued. They just confessed that it's all fake. I confessed that it started out fake, Caleb corrected. But that doesn't mean it stayed that way. Catherine looked at him in surprise. What was he implying? In these few hours, Caleb continued, I met an extraordinary woman. Intelligent, determined, courageous. A woman who faces adversity without giving up, who cares about others even when she's suffering. Caleb, Catherine whispered, a woman who deserves all the success she's achieved. And if that's not love, it's at least the beginning of something that could be love. Miriam smiled through her tears. And you, Catherine? She asked. What do you feel for Caleb? Catherine looked at the man she had only met the night before. A stranger who had risked everything to defend her, even knowing he would lose the money. She began, then stopped. I've never met anyone like him. Someone who sees me for who I really am, not for what I have. Someone willing to defend me, even when he has nothing to gain from it. But he does, Priscilla protested. The $100,000. Actually, Caleb said calmly, I don't anymore. By confessing the truth, I lost the right to the payment. Catherine stared at him. He was giving up a life-changing amount of money to defend her. Why did you do that? She asked. Because it was the right thing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Chloe, who had been silent throughout the entire argument, stood up. Can I speak? She asked. Everyone turned to the 20-year-old young woman. I don't know much about business or wills, she began, but I know people. And last night, when you two were in the living room, I saw the way you looked at each other. Chloe, Priscilla tried to interrupt her. Let me finish, Pris. I know they met yesterday. I know it started as a sham. But I saw the way Caleb defended Catherine when you attacked her. And I saw how Catherine relaxed next to him for the first time in years. Arthur nodded thoughtfully. The girl's right. There's something real there. You're being naive, Priscilla argued. It's an elaborate act. Priscilla, Miriam said firmly, you've always been ambitious. There's nothing wrong with that, but you've never shown genuine love for the company. You only see numbers and profits. And Catherine doesn't? Catherine sees people, Arthur replied. She turned this company into something Eleanor would be proud of, not just for the profits, but for the social impact. Mr. Whitaker tapped the table to get attention. We need to vote, he announced. The family council must decide whether to accept Catherine's marriage as legitimate for inheritance purposes. How does the voting work? Caleb asked. Simple majority, 4 votes, Miriam, Arthur, Chloe, and Priscilla. Priscilla realized she was losing ground. I request a recess to consult my lawyer. There's no need for a recess, Miriam declared. My vote is yes, I accept Catherine's marriage. Mine too, Chloe added immediately. They deserve each other. Arthur? Mr. Whittaker asked. Arthur looked long and hard at Catherine and Caleb. You have my blessing. Yes. Everyone turned to Priscilla. She was cornered. 3 votes in favor were enough, but Mr. Whittaker waited for her official position. She hesitated, abstain from voting. The abstention is valid, Mr. Whittaker confirmed. The decision is 3 votes in favor, 0 against, 1 abstention. Catherine Sterling's marriage is considered legitimate for all purposes of Eleanor Sterling's will. Catherine felt her legs go weak. It had worked. Against all odds, it had worked. Does that mean? She began. That means you are officially the new president and majority shareholder of Sterling Systems, Mr. Whittaker confirmed. The room erupted in hugs and congratulations. Miriam hugged Catherine, crying with joy. Arthur congratulated Caleb. Chloe screamed with happiness. Only Priscilla remained seated with an expression of defeat. Congratulations, cousin, she finally said, standing up. You win. Priscilla, Catherine started. No, you played better than me. But this isn't over. She left the room, followed by her lawyer, leaving an awkward atmosphere behind. Don't worry about her, Arthur said. Priscilla has always been dramatic. Will she accept the decision? Caleb asked. She'll have to accept it, Mr. Whittaker replied. The decision was made according to the rules set in the will. After the greetings and signing of the official papers, Catherine and Caleb found themselves alone in the conference room. Thank you, Catherine said simply. For what? For defending me, for giving up the money, for everything. Caleb smiled. You're welcome. And now? She asked. We're married for real, but we don't have a real relationship. We don't, Caleb questioned. Because I feel like we have something. Catherine studied him. There was sincerity in his eyes. Do you want to try? She asked. A real relationship? I do, but with a few conditions. What conditions? First, no money between us. Not even the 100,000 you promised me. No allowances, no expensive gifts. If we're going to try, it has to be as equals. Catherine nodded. Second, I keep working. I'm not going to become a trophy husband. Agreed. And third, we take it slow. Get to know each other for real. No rush. Catherine smiled. It was the first time in a long time someone wanted to take things slow with her. I accept your conditions. They left the Sterling Systems building officially married and with a company to run together. But more importantly, they had a real chance to build something genuine. Can I take you to meet my sister? Caleb asked. I'd love to. Sadie Beckett lived with Caleb in a simple apartment in the East Austin neighborhood. She was a slim young woman with curly brown hair and sad eyes. When she saw Catherine enter the apartment, she was clearly intimidated. Sadie, this is Catherine, Caleb introduced. My wife. Wife? Sadie looked from one to the other, confused. What do you mean, wife? Yesterday you didn't even have a girlfriend. Caleb and Catherine exchanged glances and laughed. It's a long story, Caleb said. Catherine looked around the apartment. It was small but clean and tidy. There were books scattered across the coffee table, some plants on the windowsills, family photos on the walls. It was simple, but it had something her house didn't. Warmth. Sadie is studying for civil service exams, Caleb explained. She graduated in education, but she can't work right now. Because of the depression, Sadie finished bluntly. No need to hide it from her, Caleb. Catherine liked the young woman's honesty. It must be hard, she said sincerely. It is, but I'm getting better. Caleb takes really good care of me. He seems like a good person. He's the best brother in the world. Sadie smiled, and Caleb blushed slightly. Sadie, Do you want to have lunch with us? Caleb asked. Sure, but where? We don't have much at home. We can order food, Catherine suggested. Or I can cook, Caleb offered. You cook? Catherine asked, surprised. Of course. Who do you think feeds this household? Catherine realized there was a lot about Caleb she still didn't know. During lunch, made with simple ingredients but prepared with care, she watched the dynamic between the siblings. Caleb was protective, but not overprotective. Sadie was grateful but not overly dependent. They had a balanced relationship built on love and mutual respect. Catherine, Sadie said during dessert, can I ask a personal question? Sure. Do you love my brother? The question caught Catherine off guard. She looked at Caleb, who seemed equally interested in the answer. I'm learning to, she answered honestly. Good answer, Sadie approved. Love isn't something instant. It's something you build. You talk as if you have experience, Catherine observed. I do. I had a 3-year relationship that ended when I got sick. I learned that true love is what stays during the hard times. Catherine looked at Caleb. He had stayed by his sister's side throughout her illness, sacrificing his own opportunities. Your brother loves you very much, she said to Sadie. I know, and now he loves you too. Sadie, Caleb protested. It's true, Caleb. I see it in your eyes. Catherine felt something warm in her chest. Maybe it was possible, after all. Maybe they could build something real. That afternoon, Caleb went back to work at the bar while Catherine went to the company to handle administrative matters regarding the transfer of power. She had insisted he continue working normally until he decided what he wanted to do. At the bar, Caleb's co-workers bombarded him with questions. Dude, you disappeared yesterday and now you show up married to a millionaire, asked Derek, another waiter. What's that about? Caleb gave an edited version of events, omitting the more complicated details. And now? You gonna quit everything and become a playboy? Asked Piper, the bartender. No, I'm going to keep working. Why? Derek asked incredulously. If I married a rich woman, I wouldn't work another day in my life. Because work isn't just about money, Caleb replied. It's about dignity. And because I want to contribute something to the relationship, not just take. Piper smiled. I like you, Caleb. You've always been different from the others. At Sterling Systems, Catherine called a meeting with the top directors to officially announce her confirmation as president. As everyone knows, she said to the team gathered in the conference room, there have been some changes in the company's ownership structure. I want to assure you all that our work philosophy and our projects remain unchanged. And what about Priscilla? Asked David Vance, the finance director. Is she still with the company? For now, yes. Priscilla remains director of new business development. And if she causes problems? Catherine hesitated. She knew Priscilla well enough to know she wouldn't give up easily. We'll deal with each situation as it arises. After the meeting, Catherine received a call from Priscilla. Can we talk? Her cousin asked. Sure. When? Now. I'm coming up to your office. A few minutes later, Priscilla entered Catherine's office without knocking. Her face was serious, almost threatening. You think you've won, she said without preamble. Priscilla, it doesn't have to be like this. Doesn't have to be like what? Honest, direct. Catherine sighed. What do you want? I want you to understand that this isn't over. That little act today worked with Aunt Miriam and Uncle Arthur, but it doesn't work with me. What act? The true love act. You met yesterday, Catherine. Yesterday. It's impossible to love someone you've known for less than 24 hours. Maybe you're not capable of that, Catherine replied calmly, but other people are. Other people are what? Naive? Too romantic? Open to love? Priscilla laughed scornfully. Love? You were always too pragmatic to believe in fairy tales. People change, Priscilla. Not that much. And when this fake marriage falls apart, when you divorce in a few months, I'll be here to pick up the pieces. And if it doesn't fall apart, it will fall apart, Priscilla assured her. You're too different. He's a waiter with no ambition. You're a workaholic executive. He's simple. You're complicated. You have nothing in common. We'll see. Yes, we'll see. Priscilla headed for the door but stopped before leaving. One more thing, Catherine. When it goes wrong, and it will, don't come crying to me. After Priscilla left, Catherine was alone in her office, thinking about her cousin's words. It was true that she and Caleb were very different. It was true that they had known each other for less than 24 hours. It was true that the odds were not in their favor. But it was also true that she felt something for him that she had never felt for anyone else. A connection that went beyond physical attraction or social convenience. It was respect, admiration, and perhaps something deeper that was just beginning to blossom. At 6 in the evening, she went to pick up Caleb at the bar. "How was your day?" he asked, getting into the car. "Complicated. Priscilla came to talk to me. And? She's not going to give up easily." Caleb was silent for a few minutes, watching the traffic in Austin. "Catherine, can I be honest about something?" "Of course." "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of messing everything up. Of not being enough for you. Of disappointing your family." Catherine stopped the car at a traffic light and turned to look at him. "Caleb, you don't need to be anything other than who you are. It was exactly because you are who you are that I fell in love, that I started falling for you. Even though I'm just a waiter. You're not just a waiter. You're a hard-working, honest, brave man. You take care of your sister with dedication. You stood up for a stranger when you had nothing to gain from it. You have more character than most of the businessmen I know." Caleb smiled, but he still looked worried. "And you?" he asked. "Are you scared of anything?" "I'm scared that you'll find out who I really am and decide it's not worth it. Who you really are. Controlling, stubborn, workaholic, bad at showing feelings, with complicated family issues. And you think that will scare me?" "I don't know, it scared other men." "Then they were the wrong men." They got home and cooked dinner together. It was surreal for Catherine to have someone sharing her space, especially someone who actually wanted to help, instead of just enjoying the comfort. "Can I make a suggestion?" Caleb said as he chopped vegetables. "Of course. How about we make some rules for this relationship?" "What kind of rules?" "Total honesty. If something bothers us, we talk. If we have doubts, we share them. No games, no pretending." "Fair enough." "And patience," he continued. "Let's give ourselves time to really get to know each other. No pressure to be perfect." "Agreed." "And on practical matters, do you want me to move in here? Or do you prefer I stay at my apartment?" Catherine thought about the question. Her house was too big for one person alone, but moving in together so quickly seemed rushed. "How about we do this? You stay here a few nights a week. I stay at your apartment other nights. We'll test it out and see how it works." "And Sadie? Can she stay alone?" "Caleb, your sister is 23 years old. She's not a child. And the apartment is in both your names, right? She has as much right to stay there as you do." Caleb nodded, but she could tell he still felt too responsible for his sister. "Let's take her out to dinner tomorrow," Catherine suggested. "I want to get to know her better." She would love that. That night, they watched a movie together on the couch. It was the first time in months that Catherine had completely relaxed. She didn't think about the company, didn't check emails, didn't make work calls. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked, noticing she was distracted. "About how strange this is." "What?" "Being relaxed. I don't remember the last time I spent an entire evening without working." "And how do you feel?" "Guilty," she admitted. Caleb laughed. "You need to learn how to switch off." "It's hard when you've spent your whole life proving you deserve to be where you are. Who are you proving it to?" The question made Catherine think. Who was she proving it to, really? "My father, I guess, even though he left so long ago." "And do you think he doubted you?" "I don't know. He left when I was very young. Maybe I created that pressure all by myself." Caleb reached out his arm and she settled in beside him. It was a simple gesture, but meaningful. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he said softly. "You're already amazing." Catherine felt her eyes sting. She wasn't used to receiving affection without strings attached. "Thank you." They stayed like that for a while, just enjoying each other's company. It was intimate in a way Catherine hadn't expected to feel with someone she'd known for such a short time. "Caleb, do you regret doing this, marrying me?" He was silent for a few moments, thinking about his answer. "No." "Do you?" "No." "Scared, yes. Regretful, no." "Why scared?" "Because I've never wanted something to work out so much." The next morning, Catherine woke up before Caleb and watched him sleep for a few minutes. He looked younger when he slept, more vulnerable. There was a peace on his face that she envied. She carefully got up so as not to wake him and went to make coffee. It was strange having someone to cook for, but it was a good kind of strange. "Good morning." Caleb appeared in the kitchen 15 minutes later, his hair messy. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected. Your bed is very comfortable." "It's all yours now, too." They had coffee while talking about their plans for the day. Caleb was going to work in the afternoon. Catherine had important meetings at the company. "Can I ask you something about your work?" Caleb said. "Sure. Do you like what you do? Or do you just work so hard out of obligation?" Catherine reflected on the question. "I love developing technology. I love creating solutions that help people. But I think at some point it lost its fun because it became more about competition and less about creation. And if you could change something at the company, I'd like to focus more on social projects, use our technology to solve real problems, not just to generate profit." "Why don't you do that?" "Because boards of directors don't care much about social purpose, only about numbers. But now you have control of the company, don't you?" Catherine stopped stirring her coffee, realizing he was right. "That's true. Now I can steer the company wherever I want." "Then steer it where your heart wants." It was a liberating idea. For years, Catherine had molded herself to others' expectations. Now, for the first time, she could follow her own vision. "Do you want to help me with that?" she asked impulsively. "How?" "I don't know yet, but you have a different perspective from mine. You come from a different reality. You could help me better understand what kind of projects would really make a difference in people's lives." Caleb smiled. "I'd love to." At the company, Catherine called an extraordinary meeting with the entire board. "I want to propose a change in strategic direction," she announced. "We're going to allocate 30% of our resources to social projects." "What kind of projects?" asked Megan Brooks, the marketing director. "Technology for public education, apps for small business owners, systems to facilitate access to healthcare services." "And the financial return?" Harrison questioned. "The return will be long-term and in the form of social sustainability." "Catherine," Harrison said carefully, "this could affect our short-term profits. Our profits are already sufficient. It's time to think about our purpose." "Since when did you become so idealistic?" asked Priscilla, who had arrived in the middle of the meeting. "Since I started thinking about what really matters," Catherine replied. "And that has nothing to do with your new husband?" Priscilla insinuated. "It has everything to do with it," Catherine admitted. "He showed me a perspective I had lost." "How convenient," Priscilla murmured. "Priscilla, if you don't agree with the company's new direction, you can look for another job. That won't be necessary. I just want it on record that I opposed this decision." After the meeting, Catherine felt energized in a way she hadn't in years. She had a new purpose, a clear direction. She called Caleb from the bar. "How was the meeting?" he asked. "Perfect. I'm implementing the changes we discussed." "Really? Really? And I want your help identifying what kinds of problems we should focus on." "Catherine, I don't know if I have enough knowledge for that." "You have something more valuable than technical knowledge. You have real experience." Caleb was silent for a few seconds. "Can I think about it and give you an answer tomorrow?" "Of course." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, when Caleb got home, he found Catherine in the living room with several papers spread across the table. "What's all this?" he asked. "Reports on social technology in the United States. I'm researching what already exists and where we can innovate." Caleb sat down next to her and began flipping through the documents. "This is about apps for scheduling medical appointments," he noted. "Yes, to make it easier to book appointments with public healthcare. My sister would spend hours trying to get a psychiatrist appointment. Something like this would make a difference in her life." "Exactly. That's the kind of impact I want to make." They spent the night discussing ideas, Caleb contributing the perspective of someone who actually needed these services, Catherine the technical knowledge of how to implement them. "You know what would be revolutionary?" Caleb said at one point. "What?" "An app that connects people who need occasional work with those who have services to offer, like a gig platform." "How do you mean?" "Sadie, for example, can't hold a steady job because of her depression, but she could do occasional writing jobs, proofreading, things like that. If there were a reliable platform connecting her with people who need that kind of service." Catherine stopped writing and looked at him. "That's brilliant. Is it?" "It's a solution to a real problem that affects millions of people, and it's totally feasible technically." "Could you develop something like that?" "We could, if you're willing to work with me on it." Caleb stared at her for a few seconds. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I want you to be my partner on this project." "Catherine, I don't know anything about technology. But you understand people's needs, and that's more important. What if I mess everything up? What if you don't? What if this is exactly the kind of project that will change thousands of people's lives?" Caleb felt a wave of emotion. For the first time in his life, someone was offering him a real opportunity to contribute to something meaningful. "I'm in," he said. "Really?" "Really." Catherine smiled, and, on impulse, leaned in to kiss him. It was their first real kiss, and it felt different from any other kiss she had ever given. There was promise in it, hope, the feeling that they were building something genuine. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "That was," Caleb began. "Our first real kiss," Catherine finished. "For real, for real, for real, for real." In the following days, they threw themselves into the project. Catherine created a small, dedicated team at Sterling Systems. Caleb started doing field research, talking to people in situations similar to his sister's. "I found out something interesting," he told Catherine one night. "Most people who need occasional work have specific skills. It's not just manual labor." "What kind of skills?" "Sadie knows this girl who's a freelance translator but can't get steady clients. Another guy is an excellent carpenter, but doesn't have the capital to set up a workshop. A woman who makes incredible cakes, but doesn't have the money to open a bakery. So we need a platform that values these specific skills." "Exactly. Not just I need someone to clean, but I need someone who understands legal translation, or I need a carpenter who knows how to make custom furniture." The project began to take shape. Catherine invested her own resources in it, creating a separate division within the company focused specifically on developing social technology. "What are you going to call the app?" Priscilla asked during a meeting, clearly skeptical. "Bridge," Caleb suggested. "Simple and direct." "Bridge," Catherine repeated, testing the sound. "I like it." "And who's going to use it?" Priscilla pressed. "People who need sporadic work don't have expensive smartphones." "That's why we're going to develop a version that works on any type of phone," Catherine explained, "and also a web version for those who only have access to a computer." "You're spending company resources on social fantasy," Priscilla accused. "I'm spending my money on a project I consider important," Catherine corrected, "which coincidentally benefits your husband's family." "Priscilla," Catherine stood up, "you're out of line. I'm being realistic. This project only exists because you want to impress your new husband." Caleb, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke. "Priscilla, you may not believe me, but at least respect Catherine's intelligence. She doesn't need to impress anyone with expensive projects. If she invested in this, it's because she saw real value." "How convenient for you to defend her." "I'm not defending her, I'm stating a fact." The tension in the room was palpable. Megan and Harrison exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Let's end the meeting for today," Catherine decided. "Priscilla, I want to talk to you in private." After everyone left, Catherine closed the door to the room. "Enough," she said firmly. You want to question my professional decisions. Question them. You want to criticize the projects. Criticize them. But stop attacking my husband. Why? Do you care about him that much? I do? Really? Or is it just guilt because he gave up so much to help you? The question hit Catherine in a sensitive spot. Was it just gratitude she felt, or was there something deeper? It's not guilt, she replied after a few seconds. It's affection, respect, admiration. And love? Catherine hesitated. I'm getting there. Getting there isn't love, Catherine. It's emotional convenience. And you understand love now? I understand enough to know that you're forcing something that doesn't exist naturally. Maybe you're right, Catherine admitted. Maybe we are forcing it, but I'd rather try and fail than never try. And when you fail, because you will fail, Catherine, you have nothing in common. We have more in common than you think. Like what? Catherine thought about the question. What exactly did she and Caleb have in common? Values, she finally answered. We want to build things that matter. We want to help people. We want to be honest with each other. That's not a basis for a marriage. No. Then what is? Priscilla didn't answer immediately. Passion, she said finally. Natural chemistry, shared histories, undeniable physical attraction. And you think we don't have that? I think you're trying to force it. Catherine didn't know how to respond because, in part, Priscilla was right. They were trying to build something artificial in an accelerated way, but that didn't mean it couldn't become real. Priscilla, regardless of what you think about my marriage, I need you to respect my decisions at the company. Otherwise, I'll have to take administrative measures. Measures like firing me? If necessary. Priscilla smiled coldly. You can't fire me, I'm family. Yes, I can. And I will if you keep creating conflicts. We'll see. That night, Catherine arrived home emotionally exhausted. The conversation with Priscilla had affected her more than she would have liked to admit. How was your day? Caleb asked, noticing her expression. Complicated. Priscilla is being difficult. Because of me? Because of a lot of things. But yes, partly because of you. Caleb sat down next to her on the couch. Catherine, can I ask you a difficult question? Sure. Do you think we're forcing this too much? Our relationship? The question caught her off guard. It was exactly what Priscilla had questioned. Why are you asking? Because sometimes I feel like we're playing roles, like we're trying so hard to make it work that we've lost the spontaneity. Catherine realized he had put his finger on a wound she didn't even know existed. And what do you suggest? That we stop trying so hard, that we let things flow naturally. What do you mean? Like any normal couple, going out to dinner when we feel like it, arguing when we disagree, making love when we feel attracted, sleeping apart when we want space. Making love, Catherine repeated, surprised. Catherine, sorry, that was too forward. No, she interrupted him. It wasn't. It's just that we haven't done it yet. I know. And do you want to? Caleb looked her straight in the eyes. I do. Very much. But only when you want to too, really. Catherine felt something stir in the pit of her stomach. It was desire, but it was also something deeper. I want to too, she admitted. Really? Really? This time it was Caleb who leaned in to kiss her. The kiss was different from the first one, more intense, more charged with intention. When they parted, they were both breathing heavily. Are you sure? Caleb asked. I am. They went up to Catherine's room, holding hands. It was the first time they were there together with the intention of truly being together. Caleb, Catherine said when they reached the room. Yes? Thank you. For what? For being patient with me. For not pressuring me. For letting me get here in my own time. Thank you, he replied, for letting me into your life. For trusting me. What happened next was natural and beautiful. There was no hurry, no performance. There were only two people discovering each other, giving themselves, building an intimacy that went beyond the physical. Afterwards, lying in bed, Catherine settled against Caleb's chest. It was different, she said softly. Different how? Better, more real. For me too. Caleb? I think I'm falling in love with you. For real. Caleb smiled in the dark. I think I am too. Even after I've been so complicated? Especially because of that. You're not easy, Catherine, but you're worth it. How can you be sure? Because when I look at you, I see someone worth fighting for. Someone who makes me want to be a better person. Catherine felt her eyes fill with tears. No one's ever said that to me before. Then the right people have never crossed your path before. And you're the right person. I don't know, but I want the chance to find out. The next morning, Catherine woke up feeling different. There was a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. When she looked at Caleb sleeping beside her, she felt a wave of tenderness that surprised her. She got up carefully and went to make coffee. This time she was doing it for pleasure, not out of obligation. Good morning. Caleb appeared a few minutes later, wearing only his pajama pants. Good morning. He came up from behind and hugged her, kissing her neck. It was a simple gesture, but it made Catherine feel wanted in a way she had never experienced. How did you sleep? He asked. Perfectly. Really? For the first time in months, I didn't dream about spreadsheets or meetings. What did you dream about? About you. Caleb smiled and turned her around to kiss her. I have to go to work, he said when they parted. I know. To have dinner with Sadie tonight? I'd love to. That day at work, Catherine felt more productive and creative than she had in weeks. The team noticed her mood shift. You're different today, Megan observed during a meeting. Different how? More relaxed, happier. I guess I am. Does it have to do with your husband? Catherine smiled. Everything to do with it. The bridge project was moving quickly. In 2 weeks, they'd have a working prototype to test. Caleb had recruited Sadie and some friends to be the first beta users. How is your relationship going? Megan asked when they were alone. Good. Really good, actually. Really? Because at first it seemed kind of forced. Catherine laughed. It was forced, but it isn't anymore. What changed? We stopped trying so hard. We started just being. Megan smiled. It's good to see you happy, Catherine. It's been a while since you truly smiled. That afternoon, Catherine received an unexpected call. It was from a journalist at Exam Magazine. Mrs. Sterling, we're putting together a story about companies that shifted focus to social responsibility. Could we talk about the bridge project? How did you hear about the project? We got an anonymous tip. Catherine sighed. It was probably Priscilla trying to stir up trouble. Sure, we can talk. The interview lasted an hour. The journalist asked about the motivation for the project, the investment involved, the expected return. Is it true your husband is one of the project's creators? He asked at one point. It's true. Caleb has a very valuable perspective on the real needs of the people the app aims to serve. And isn't there a conflict of interest there? What do you mean? Well, you were recently married, correct? And soon after, you launch a project that directly benefits the social class he comes from. Catherine felt her blood boil. Are you implying my husband unduly influenced me? I'm not implying anything, just asking if it isn't an interesting coincidence. It's not a coincidence, it's evolution. Getting to know Caleb opened my eyes to needs I hadn't seen before. That's not manipulation, it's personal growth. And if the project fails, if it doesn't achieve the expected return, the return we expect isn't just financial, it's social. And if it fails, we'll try again. After the interview, Catherine felt uneasy. She knew the article could be problematic, especially if the journalist decided to focus on the conflict of interest angle. When she got home that evening, she found Caleb and Sadie in the kitchen, testing recipes for dinner. Hey, sis-in-law, Sadie greeted her cheerfully. We're experimenting with making Italian pasta. It smells delicious. How was your day? Caleb asked, noticing her worried expression. Complicated. I think someone leaked information about Bridge to the press. Is that bad? It could be, depending on the angle they take. What kind of angle? Catherine hesitated before answering. Conflict of interest. The idea that you influenced me to create the project to benefit your social class. Caleb stopped stirring the sauce. And do you think that's what happened? Of course not, but that's how it might be interpreted. Sadie looked from one to the other, feeling the tension in the air. Maybe I should leave, she began. No, Catherine said. Stay. This affects you too, since you're going to be one of the beta users. Catherine, Caleb turned to her, do you regret creating the project? No. Then it doesn't matter what they write. You know your motivations. I know. The people who will benefit know. The rest is noise. But it could affect the company. It could affect your reputation. My reputation survived a midnight marriage to a stranger. Caleb smiled. I think it'll survive this too. Sadie laughed. You two are impossible. You find problems where there aren't any. What do you mean? Catherine asked. Well, you fell in love. You decided to work together on a project that could help a lot of people. Where's the problem in that? People will think that. People will think a lot of things, Sadie interrupted. They always do. What matters is that you know the truth. Catherine looked at Sadie with admiration. At 23, the young woman had a wisdom that Catherine herself had taken much longer to acquire. You're right, Catherine admitted. Of course I am. Now come try this dough, it's turning out delicious. Dinner was relaxed and full of laughter. Sadie told embarrassing stories about Caleb as a child. Caleb retaliated with even more embarrassing stories about Sadie as a teenager. Catherine felt like part of a real family for the first time in her life. Can I ask a question? Sadie said at one point. Sure, Catherine replied. Do you two plan to have kids? The question caught Catherine completely off guard. She and Caleb had never talked about it. She stammered. It's too early to think about that, Caleb answered diplomatically. But do you want to? Sadie insisted. Catherine looked at Caleb. There was genuine curiosity in his eyes. I've always wanted to, she admitted, but I never found the right person to be the father of my children. And now? Sadie asked. Catherine looked at Caleb again. Now? Maybe. Caleb has always been good with kids, Sadie commented. He practically raised me. Sadie, Caleb protested, blushing. It's true. Our parents worked too much. Caleb took me to school, helped me with homework, took care of me when I was sick. Catherine looked at Caleb with a mix of admiration and tenderness. She pictured him taking care of a child, and the image moved her more than she expected. Do you want kids? She asked him directly. I do, he answered without hesitating. I've always wanted to start a family. Even knowing it would be a huge responsibility? Responsibility doesn't scare me. What scares me is not being able to give a child the best. And now? Catherine asked, echoing Sadie's question. Now? Things have changed. He smiled. Catherine felt something warm in her chest. The idea of having kids with Caleb no longer seemed absurd. It seemed possible, even desirable. But it's way too early to think about that, she said quickly. Of course, Caleb agreed. First, we have to learn to live together. And finish the app, Sadie added. And survive the magazine article, Catherine finished. They laughed, but there was something in the air that hadn't been there before. A new possibility, a future that could be longer and deeper than any of them had imagined. The following week, the article came out in Exam magazine. The headline was, Sterling Systems, When Love Turns into Business. Catherine read the entire piece with her heart in her throat. The journalist had been more balanced than she expected, but there were still insinuations about the convenience of the timing of the marriage and the project. It's impossible not to question whether the recent changes at Sterling Systems are the result of a well-thought-out business strategy or unprofessional personal influences, one paragraph said. Is it worse than I thought? Caleb asked, seeing her expression. It could be worse, but it's not exactly positive. So what now? Now we prove them wrong. How? By making bridge work, showing concrete results. Caleb smiled. I like it when you get this determined. Even when it could get me into trouble. Especially when it could get you into trouble. Catherine's phone rang. It was Megan from the company. Catherine, did you see the article? I saw it. And we're going to work twice as hard to prove them wrong. Good, because I just got 3 calls from investors interested in Bridge. It seems that, even with the insinuations, people liked the idea. Catherine smiled for the first time since she'd read the article. Really? Really? One of them wants to schedule a meeting this week. Set it up. When she hung up the phone, Caleb looked at her expectantly. Good news, she said. We have interested investors. Even after the article. Because of the article. The publicity, even if questionable, made people curious. Caleb hugged her and spun her in the air. I can't believe it. You can believe it. Your project will succeed. Our project, he corrected, our project. In those moments, Catherine realized she had found something she never knew she was looking for, not just a husband or a business partner, but a true partner. Someone to share dreams, challenges, victories, and defeats with. Caleb. Yes? I love you. It was the first time she said those words and truly meant them. I love you too, he replied, and she knew he was being sincere too. Even though I'm complicated, especially because of that. Even though I'm rich, especially because of that too. Why? Because you could choose anyone in the world, and you chose me. Catherine smiled. I didn't choose. I fell in love. Is it different? Completely different. They kissed right there, in the living room of Catherine's house, with the open magazine on the table showing the article about them. They no longer cared what people thought. They had something real, something valuable, something worth protecting. And now, Caleb asked when they parted, now we live our life. We create our app. We help people. And we see where it leads. Sounds like a good plan. It's the best plan I've ever had. 1 year later, Catherine and Caleb were at the official launch ceremony of Bridge. The app had connected over 50,000 people to job opportunities across this part of the country. When did you come up with the idea for Bridge? Asked a journalist during the press conference. Catherine and Caleb exchanged glances and smiled. It was on an ordinary night, Catherine replied, when we realized that the best solutions come from those who truly understand the problems. And do you plan to expand to other states? We want Bridge to reach the United States, Caleb answered. There are millions of people with incredible talents who just need the right opportunity. And personal life. How do you balance work and marriage? We don't balance, Catherine laughed. We mix it all together. It's impossible to separate who we are professionally from who we are personally. And does it work? For us, it works perfectly, Caleb confirmed. After the interview, they walked to the event's balcony, where they could see Austin lit up. We did it, Catherine said. Did what? We proved them wrong, about us, about the project, about everything. Do you still care what they think? Catherine thought about the question. No, but it's good to know we were right. And now? What's the next project? Catherine smiled and placed her hand on her belly, which was already starting to show a slight curve. I think the next project is already in development. Caleb followed her gaze and his face lit up. What do you mean? I'm pregnant. Caleb was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Really? Really. He picked her up and spun her around, kissing her intensely. I can't believe it. You can believe it. When did you find out? Yesterday. I wanted to tell you after the event. A baby, Caleb whispered, still in disbelief. A baby. Our baby. Our baby. They stood there, hugging, watching the city where they met, where they got married, where they built a life together. It had been an unlikely journey, full of challenges and surprises, but it had led them exactly where they needed to be. Catherine? Yes? Thank you. For what? For choosing me that night, for trusting me, for building all this with me. Thank you, she replied, for saying yes, for staying, for teaching me what real love is. And now, Caleb asked, echoing the question they had asked so many times, Now we live our lives, raise our child, make our projects succeed, and we're happy. Sounds like a great plan. It's the best plan in the world. 2 years later, Catherine was in the living room of their house, now renovated and full of colorful toys, watching Caleb play with Leo, their 1.5-year-old son. The boy had inherited his father's brown eyes and his mother's determination. "Daddy car!" Leo shouted, pointing at a red toy car. "Which car, son? This one?" "No, blue car." Caleb laughed and picked up the blue car, making engine noises as he pushed it across the floor. Leo clapped his hands with joy. Catherine smiled, remembering how she had doubted she could ever be happy like this. Simple, domestic, real. Bridge had expanded across the entire United States and was being replicated in other Latin American countries. Sterling Systems had become a benchmark in social technology. And they had a family. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked, coming to sit beside her on the couch. "About how everything has changed. For the better. For much better." Leo ran over to them and threw himself into Catherine's lap. "Mommy," he said, pointing at the TV where a cartoon was playing. "Want to watch, sweetie?" "Yes." Caleb turned on the cartoon, and Leo settled between them, sucking his thumb and fixing his eyes on the screen. "You know what I'm thinking?" Caleb said softly. "What?" "That Leo needs a little brother or sister." Catherine laughed. "Already? Not now, but maybe next year." "Are you getting addicted to being a dad?" "Completely addicted." Catherine looked at Leo, who was almost asleep in her lap, then at Caleb, who was watching her with so much love that it still surprised her. "You know what?" she said. "What?" "I think I'm addicted to being a mum too." "Really?" "And to being your wife." "And I'm addicted to being your husband." Leo fell asleep between them, and they stayed there in the comfortable silence of a happy family. Catherine thought about the night she met Caleb, the absurd proposal she had made, the fear she had felt that she was forcing something unnatural. Now she knew there was nothing more natural than this. True love wasn't the kind from movies, instant and dramatic. It was the kind built day after day, choice after choice, small gesture after small gesture. "Caleb, if you could go back, would you do it all over again?" "Exactly the same." "And you?" "Exactly the same, even knowing all the complications that came later, especially because of the complications. They made us stronger." Priscilla had left the company 6 months after Bridge's launch, not because of conflicts, but because she had found her own passion in an environmental sustainability startup. They still spoke occasionally, and the relationship had become more cordial, almost friendly. Miriam was the most devoted grandmother in the world, visiting Leo at least 3 times a week. Uncle Arthur had become a valuable mentor to Caleb in business management. Chloe was finishing college and already talking about working at Bridge. Sadie had gotten a steady job through the app itself and was dating one of the developers on the team. She now lived in her own apartment, but had dinner with Catherine and Caleb at least once a week. "I think we're going to have to put Leo to bed," Catherine said, seeing that their son had completely fallen asleep. "I'll take him," Caleb offered. He picked up Leo carefully and went up to the boy's room. Catherine followed, watching the gentleness with which Caleb placed their son in bed, adjusted the covers and gave a little kiss on his forehead. "Good night, son," he whispered. They left the room in silence and went to their own bedroom. "Catherine," Caleb said as they were getting ready for bed. "Yes? Are you happy? Really? Happier than I ever thought possible. And you?" "Same. Sometimes I can't believe any of this is real." "It's real," Catherine assured him. "Very real." She lay down on the bed and Caleb settled beside her, pulling her close. "Tomorrow we have the meeting with the investors from New York," he reminded her. "I know, are you nervous?" "A little. And you?" "No. We have an incredible product, fantastic numbers, and a real story. There's no way this can go wrong." "Always so confident." "I learn to be confident when I have the right person by my side." Caleb smiled and kissed her softly. "I love you, Catherine Sterling Beckett." "I love you, Caleb Sterling Beckett." They had decided to combine their last names after Leo was born. It was a symbolic way to show they were truly a family. Lying in the darkness of the bedroom, Catherine thought about how life had a funny way of surprising you. 3 years earlier, she was a lonely businesswoman obsessed with work, with no prospect of love or family. Now she was a married woman, a mother, a partner in a project that changed lives, and happier than she had ever dreamed of being. "Caleb," she whispered. "Yes? Thank you for saying yes that night. Thank you for asking me. It was the best question I've ever asked in my life, and it was the best answer I've ever given." They fell asleep in each other's arms, as they had done every night for over 2 years. Next door, Leo slept peacefully in his room. Downstairs, family photos smiled from the walls, and all across Austin, hundreds of people were finding jobs and opportunities through the app, born from the love of 2 people who met at the right time, in the right place, with the right question. The end. What an incredible story, isn't it? Catherine and Caleb showed us that sometimes love shows up in the most unexpected moments and in the most unlikely ways. Now tell me, do you think it was possible for them to truly fall in love in such a short time? And what did you think of the change Caleb brought to Catherine's life? Leave your opinion here in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.